Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Bosko in Person, released in 1933, it's the 50th in the series, and it's directed by Hugh Harman. And with me today, my good friend Devin Baxter. Say hi!
Hi everybody, how you doing? Good to be here.
Yes, it's really happy that you're finally on one of these. We're going to have a great time. You can find this short on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6 DVD set. I have a link below, and what you're going to see in this review is my own personal upscaled copy, so it looks as close to HD as possible. And in case you haven't seen this short before, well, there's not much to it. It's Bosko and Honey just giving us a show, and that's it. But, as you'll find out later on, this actually means that this short is one of the better shorts that the harmonizing team did. So to start things off, you'll first see a re-edit of the original audio commentary I did back in the day before I had to take it down. Thanks to my good friend Blue Genocide for redoing that for me. And then after that, I'll be having a wonderful chat with Devin Baxter, so make sure you grab that popcorn and enjoy. As you no doubt know, if you've been watching these commentaries, a lot of Boskos, especially earlier ones, are just Bosko, and sometimes Bosko and Honey just singing and dancing and doing whatever. At least in this one, even though there's no story, there's still a reason for them to do all this. Just, they're putting on a show, and you can imagine being in the theater back in the day. You'd pay your few cents or whatever it is, and you'd see all these different short movies, a cartoon, newsreels and whatnot. So this would have been like them entertaining an actual theater audience. So there you go. Now this animation here, I really love the facial expression of him doing this particular song. This also shows what a good restoration can do. I mean, you can see the shadows clearly. You can imagine watching this on a washed out television print, and yeah, you just don't get these kinds of details. Then got this wonderful song here. Love the facial expression. I mean, there were a few early Mickeys that were sort of similar, where it was just entertainment and no real story, and that's it. But now we're going to see the drum, of course, before we see Jimmy once again. And you'll see that coming up right here. There he is. Or it could be both. Maybe start off as one, I don't know. Oh, what a crazy cartoon. Yeah, see the American flag, so that's why I think it's Roosevelt, but let me know what you think. Alrighty, so those were my original thoughts at the time, so now let's have a chat about Bosko in Person, and Bosko in general, in fact. We can have a little chat about it. So, Devin, you picked this one. What appeals to you about Bosko in Person? Like, what makes this one stand out amongst a lot of the other Boskos?
A lot of people tend to favor this Bosko cartoon more than any other. There's just a certain rhythm to it that really snaps along at a good pace. Has a nice verve and energy to it. And what fascinates me about this period of Warner Brothers cartoons, of course, is that most people know that harmonizing was a separate entity away from, Warner Brothers didn't set up its own animation department yet until after harmonizing had left Leon Schlesinger. And they were on, I believe, Western Avenue. The animators credited on this are Roland Hamilton and Bob McKimson. Now, Roland Hamilton was Disney's first hire in the West Coast. When Disney moved from Kansas City to California, Roland Hamilton was the first animator that he had hired. He didn't hire Works nor Harmonizing just yet. So that's kind of an interesting connection between Harmonizing's association with Disney and moving forward in the 30s away from Disney. I'm not sure what Hamilton animated in this particular cartoon, but Bob McKimson, of course, came from a Rubber Gray studio in 1930 and 1931. It didn't last too long because Rubber Gray was more interested in spending his money on yachts and foreign travel than paying his own staff.
Who doesn't?
You can see one of Rubber Gray's cartoons in Tommy Stathis's First Cartoon Roots set, Bingo the Bear Cub, and Hot Toe Molly. It's kind of a mess, but if you really want to see the early works of guys like McKimson or Cal Dalton and Ken Harris, Preston Blair, go check that out. Other probable animators on this cartoon, that this doesn't mean they're all animating on this cartoon. I'm just judging from the credits that are in the 1933 releases of harmonizing cartoons. Probable animators on this might have been Tom McKimson, who was the eldest McKimson brother, Paul Smith, Larry Martin, Norm Blackburn, Carmen Maxwell, who voiced Bosko in the Bosko the Talking Kid pilot and Sinking in the Bathtub, and Larry Silverman. And Larry Silverman's interesting to me because he was previously at Disney's as an assistant to Norm Ferguson, then left Disney's to work at Harmonizing for a little bit, I think about 1 or 2 years. Then he left Harmonizing to work in New York at Van Buren, I assume for more money. Then when Van Buren closed down, he became one of the main animators for Paul Terry's studio in New Rochelle from 36 to 1947 when they had the strike. Larry Silverman was one of the strikers there. Again, I'm not sure what Larry Silverman animated on this cartoon. I'm not sure about his animation at Harmonizing, but just something that I find fascinating about that period of Harmonizing. Now, I'm not particularly sure. There's no evidence of this, and I really wish there was. Bruce Freeling might have directed a few of the Boskos and Merry Melodies. I'm not sure exactly which ones. I know that he said that he directed Bosko in Dutch, and he might have directed some others. I have this gut feeling that he might have been a de facto director of Bosko in person. Just the way the timing is, particularly with the dancing.
So during the tap dancing part, you feel as though Bruce Freeling might have had a hand in it due to the timing. And I can see that. I know it's not confirmed or anything, but no, I can definitely see that for sure.
So Harmonizing split between Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, and with their output every year, I imagine that they gave some titles to Freeling. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what titles they were, but I'd like to think that Freeling did direct Bosko in person. There's just certain things in Freeling's sense of humor, like particular bits of personality, particularly when Bosko does his tap dancing routine. He's doing a takeoff on a vaudeville dancer named Will Mahoney. He was an eccentric tap dancer in vaudeville. He had a shtick where he would tap dance and kind of pretend to lose his balance while tap dancing and do a pratfall. This is sort of what Bosko does. And when Bosko walks back, you get these steps. He's embarrassed, but he's going to try again. I have a feeling that was one of Frizz's big contributions to that kind of comedy in the Bosko cartoons.
Oh, yeah, no, I could definitely see that. What about the glove sequence? I mean, that part looks like it must be based on some sort of routine or someone. Is that based off of any routine at the time?
I haven't been able to find anything based on that. There are some websites that say, oh, this is sort of a precursor to Senior Wences, Sadite, 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 that kind of thing, but that was
Yes.
much later.
Indeed.
I'm not sure
indeed.
what exactly it's supposed to be. It's probably just it's just a cute little gag to me.
I mean, I love Honey's dance, where she does that whole thing with her hips. She's, the lights actually change. I love that effect. And when she has a spotlight on.
I love that scene.
Is that based off of someone?
It is. So Honey is doing Tess Gardella. Tess Gardella had a known stage persona as Aunt Jemima, and Gardella was a white woman who performed in blackface. Even though Aunt Jemima was around as an icon of pancake batter long before the 1920s, Tess Gardella was billed as Aunt Jemima on occasion on stage and in film. She's best known for a role in the original stage production of Showboat in 1927, where she played Queenie. She also starred in the 1929 film version, where they tacked on about 2 reels of songs from the 1927 stage version, and the rest of the reels didn't have much to do with the Broadway production, as far as I understand. She also starred in a 1932 Broadway revival of Showboat. Might have been the reason why they included a sequence where Honey does an Aunt Jemima routine a la Tess Gardella. And the animation looks like the work of Bob Stokes. Judging from the harmonizing drafts that I received from Mike Barrier, which he received from Rudy Ising in the 70s, I shared a few of those on Cartoon Research, And yes, I will figure out a way to bring back the dead video links so that everybody can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But to me, it looks like Bob Stokes. And I love the way that Stokes animates. It's a cycle. So he has her hands move with her hips in such a way that's so advanced. And apparently, Hugh Harman said to Barrier that Stokes conducted life classes at Harmonizing around 1932. And you could definitely see it. There's a sense of anatomy with that particular sequence of Honey moving her hips and everything. And again, it's a cycle. And the only thing that changes is her head when she scat sings.
She even briefly transforms into another celebrity. I love the transition, though, of that she gets the blonde wig and then she just puts it over her face and her whole face transforms. Now, big shoes. I wonder who could this be? This one might be an easier one for people to identify because of the whole joke involving big feet.
I wonder if Bob McKimson learned a few things from Bob Stokes. Bob McKimson was schooled in anatomy as well. I'd like to think that Bob Stokes was as well. I believe Bob Stokes was a fine artist. I haven't really researched that. But that's one of the questions I would like to know, if Bob Stokes and Bob McKimson got together and talked drawing and anatomy and things like that at Harmonizing.
Indeed.
And of course, Honey transformed into Greta Garbo. She says, "I tank, I go home now." That was based on a quote she might have said. It's apocryphal. I don't know if she said it or not. Some people said she didn't. Some people said she did. Based on a movie she did with a director, I forget the title. I think it was something like The Tempest, where the director demanded she dip her feet in cold water or something. And she just said, "I tank, I go home now." Like, no, thank you. By 1932, her success allowed her to dictate the terms of her contracts. And, she was very selective about her roles. She was a big star for MGM in the 20s and 30s. At that point, she had been in Anna Christie, Mata Hari, and in 1932, Grand Hotel, where she says her famous line, "I want to be alone."
Yeah, it's the one that they keep on playing on, because what people probably don't realize today was that she was incredibly reclusive. She didn't sign autographs and that sort of thing. She was a very private person. And once she finished the last film, I forgot the title. I know it's from 1941. She just never really went back into film. She just did her own thing, and that was it. So
apparently she was in the New York area.
Yeah.
There's someone I know who said they ran into her at one point, like just walking down the street. What a crazy thing, huh?
Yeah, no, exactly right. And, she just wanted to, be alone, and and that was it. I know they tried to get her into films later on, but even if one little thing was off, she would just pull out entirely. So it just makes me think she probably just got over the whole celebrity thing and just looked for any excuse not to act ever again, which is a shame. Which is quite good. I recommend watching her films. But there's another celebrity here that Bosko impersonates that a lot of people wouldn't know today. I only knew of this celebrity because of Aristocats, and Maurice Chevalier.
Maurice Chevalier. Yeah, Maurice Chevalier was a popular singer and actor in Paramount features, particularly with a director named Ernst Lubitsch, in musical comedies like The Love Parade, The Smiling Lieutenant, 1 Hour with You. One of the big features he was in 1932 was Ruben Mamoulian's Love Me Tonight, and Mamoulian directed Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with Frederick March, also for Paramount. There's also caricatures associated by hat, which is the first of Bosko's impersonations associated by a hat. And he's wearing Maurice Chevalier's boater hat. Beside the voice and the big lips, he's also wearing his signature hat.
Indeed.
And the same thing with Ted Lewis, when Bosko plays the clarinet with Sweet Georgia Brown at the end. And Ted Lewis was a big jazz personality in the 20s and 30s for Columbia Records. And Bosko wears his trademark battered top hat while playing clarinet.
Yeah, and that's a reference that a lot of people would miss today. They'll just assume he's just having a good time on stage playing the clarinet without it actually meaning anything when you actually watch it.
There's a subtle Ted Lewis reference in a Mickey Mouse cartoon called Blue Rhythm from 1931. The way he plays clarinet, and he goes, "Aha!" in the manner of Ted Lewis. So Ted Lewis was very prominent in cartoons as well, second to Paul Whiteman's orchestra, apparently. And the way he played clarinet was sort of squeaky and corny by 1930 standards, but he was still a popular figure. So he was caricatured quite often.
Including, speaking of the weather, Frank Tashlins, you can see him I guess, more prominently. So that's probably the best way to see him caricatured. But I gotta say, one bit of animation I absolutely love in this one was just slightly after the clarinet, when you see Honey just doing that wild dance. You have a split moment where everything turns black and she's in grayscale. And then, of course, you see a close-up of her mouth and that. That just wowed me. I absolutely love that.
I love that effect. That's
Yeah.
probably why people love this Bosko cartoon more than any other. It just pulls out all the stops. And of course, her mouth enveloping the camera goes all the way back to Lady Play Your Mandolin. You gotta save those depression dollars, fellas, so you gotta reuse what you can.
Exactly.
But when you watch these in chronological order, you're thinking, wait, didn't I see this bit of animation? It was a way to save money. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows that, but it was a way to minimize costs, especially with the budgets they had from Leon Schlesinger. And of course, that's why they left Leon Schlesinger's to begin with. Hugh Harman wanted to up the budget, probably make them in color or something, but that wasn't going to happen.
On one hand, it's a shame because it would be nice to see what they would have done had they kept on going. But then again, if they did that, we wouldn't have all those wonderful Looney Tunes and stuff that we enjoy today. One reference at the end people wouldn't understand either is the head that's in the drum. Even I was sort of going, yeah, who's this guy? So, who is this person?
This goes into American history now.
There we
have
go.
Americana in terms of entertainment with this cartoon, and a lot of American animated cartoons in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and topical references. This one's very topical. So Franklin Roosevelt is on that drum. He was elected in November 1932, and as part of the New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt's holding a 3-2 beer, as swinging it around as Bosko pounds on the drum as the music plays, "My country, 'tis of thee." And 3-2 beer was the highest alcohol content beer allowed to be produced legally from March to December 1933. Now, as part of the New Deal, FDR signed the Cullen-Harrison Act that legalized the sales of alcohol, and that repealed the Volstead Act that prohibited intoxicating beverages, what caused prohibition. So that's why we have that last scene, and America is playing in a lot of Americans' minds. Finally, we get to have alcohol again, even if it's 3.2%.
We can drink again. Hooray.
And that was repealed March 22nd, 1933. It didn't go into effect until April 7th. Now, what's interesting is that I've seen newspaper clippings that this cartoon played as early as February. So I imagine that was kind of brewing, like, oh, it's part of the New Deal. He's going to do it, guys. He's going to end prohibition. So that's why they put that gag in.
That would be why, for sure. And I like how you said that it was brewing. Good job.
Oops, I didn't think about that.
No.
So, yeah, again, I'm sure everyone thought that it was a sure thing. Prohibition was going to be repealed by Franklin Roosevelt in terms of the New Deal.
I think the writing was a wall in terms of prohibition. It's just people were going to drink whether you like it or not. It's just like with cannabis and that sort of stuff. But the interesting thing about the animation with the drum, though, I always found this a little bit weird. How you have Roosevelt's arms out, so that's sort of 3-dimensional. So Bosko is hitting the drum as though it's 2-dimensional. It's such, when you watch it in motion, it's fine, but when you watch it in slow motion, it's a very weird. It's like he's hitting his elbow in one part and he's hitting his chin. It's very strange. And I'm assuming Honey's American flag is not quite accurate. There's only 9 states, which I'm assuming there would have been more in 1932. Not quite 50. I know that Hawaii and Alaska aren't on board yet, but would it have been 48 at the time? I'm sure someone in the comments would say, well, actually, but anyway. Just looking at as well, we've got another reference to Schnozola. I mean, how many times has he been caricatured in these cartoons? I wonder if someone's done a count. That would be probably a very high number, I'd say.
They have a book on the animated Marx Brothers. There should be one on the animated Jimmy Durante. That would be very handy. Of course, Jimmy Durante was a huge star on Broadway in the early 1930s. And he was a jack of all trades. He played piano, did comedy, and did some acting. And, of course, he was known as Schnozola because of his nose.
Of course.
In his very New York accent. At the time, around 1932, he starred in a series of comedies with Buster Keaton at MGM. Some people like those, and some do. It's Not the best of Keaton's filmography to me, but, it was a certain part of his career that shouldn't be ignored. Some of those are things like Speak Easily, The Passionate Plumber, and What? No Beer? Another Prohibition era title. You can see Durante and Keaton caricatured in a Flip the Frog cartoon called Soda Squirt from 1933. That's the last Flip the Frog cartoon. And later, after Bosko in Person is released, Jimmy Durante becomes prominent in radio. He was in Eddie Cantor's Chasing Sanborn Hour a little bit after Bosko in Person's release. His career went on into the 70s. He was one of the most prominent figures in entertainment, adapted very well in vaudeville, radio, movies, television.
He was in Mad, 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 Mad World. I reckon a lot of the newer generation probably rediscovered him through that movie. Like, oh, who's this guy? That's what I think anyway. But
they're not caricaturing him. There are characters who imitate his voice, like Spike the Bulldog in the Tom and Jerry cartoons, or
yes.
Doggy Daddy at Hanna-Barbera. And if you watch Frosty the Snowman every year from Rankin Bass, Jimmy Durante's the narrator, and he's caricatured.
Indeed. And funnily enough, as an aside, I actually had not seen that at all shine.
Frosty the Snowman?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
it's just not a staple here as far as I'm aware. Even Charlie Brown Christmas, that's not really a big staple as far as I'm aware. I know the Bugs Bunny Christmas, the Looney Christmas Tales, I know that was played quite often and a few other things. But look, maybe it has, but I don't know. Offhand, I can't.
Part of the draw of the Rankin Bass Christmas specials were big marquee names as narrators. Burl Ives and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Andy Griffith in Frosty's Winter Wonderland and things like that.
Of course. I think maybe part of it is that we have summer and Christmas, so, which is kind of weird. You got Santa Claus all dressed up in his winter gear, and yet it's like nearly, I know you guys do have Fahrenheit, I'm going to say in Celsius first, it's about 40 degrees Celsius, so we're looking at about 105 or whatever Fahrenheit, give or take.
Well, one thing I'd like to say about this cartoon is that the dancing, if you notice, is very accurately done. And they had a fellow named Jonathan Moe Caldwell in the studio. And I looked at the Film Daily yearbook from 1933, and besides producers, story department, animation department, they had a dance department headed by Moe Caldwell. And Moe Caldwell would model dance steps for our harmonizing cartoon. And they stayed with them in their MGM cartoons as well. It's just fascinating to me that they had a dance department. It's sort of similar to the Van Buren cartoons of the early 30s. They had a man named Jack Ward, who later became a story man at Fleischer and Famous, who modeled dance steps for them, and they would chart them out, and the characters would dance these very observed dance steps.
That's great dancing. That's part of why this cartoon's so darn good. Just the dancing is just, I guess, infectious. It makes you want to get up and dance, really. I mean, I won't because I got sciatica, but
Music and cartoons go hand in hand in the early 30s. That's what it was all about. It was a novelty to have synchronized movement to the beat of the music, especially during the Depression, when things were looking black and you paid your nickel or dime or however much admission cost. It was escapism, this kind of thing. You might think today, like, oh, it's a little too peppy for me or everything like that. We needed that.
Oh, exactly right. Exactly. Because this sort of thing, if you're looking at this cartoon, there's no story. It's just Bosko Honey on stage, caricaturing certain routines or celebrities of the time, and that's it. There's nothing there. But unlike the other Boskos, at least this knows what it is, and it does it so well.
And of course, at that time, there were no storyboards yet. You had a informal gag meeting or story meeting with many of the animators, and you would pass around probably a synopsis with 1 to 3 paragraphs. Bosko and Honey are on stage. Bosko tap dance, bungles it, so on and so forth. They might have ideas for certain scenes, like imitate Garbo, Durante, Chevalier, all that stuff. Add in other gags. What else have you got, fellas? That's how these stories were laid out back then. At Disney's, it was a little bit more planned, where they would have thumbnail sketches to give it a certain flow. I imagine that Harmonizing did the same thing, little thumbnail sketches, but I'm not entirely sure.
It explains why a lot of the endings in a lot of these Bosko shorts just end. Like, there's no proper resolution. There's no build up to anything. It's just end. And they even made fun of themselves in writing Bosko as well.
Yeah, exactly. They basically timed their cartoons as they went along. So sometimes there wouldn't be an ending to the picture until an animator went up to them and said, "Hey, do you have anything for me?" And they didn't get to the end of the picture yet because they were still timing it out on the bar sheet. There's an example of bar sheets from Shuffle Off to Buffalo from, I believe, Rudy Eising's collection that Kausler shared. And you could see that they time it to the frame.
Wow, that would have been something.
Even eye blinks, little movements are timed exactly to the frame.
Wow, that's incredible. Just the amount of work it will take just to get time that way, it's incredible. In terms of music, so what do we hear in this particular short?
So, of course, the second Looney Tunes theme is a song called Whistle and Blow Your Blues Away by Carmen Lombardo and Joe Young. Carmen Lombardo was related to Guy Lombardo, who was a popular crooner in the 30s. Frank Tashlin poked fun at him a little bit as Guy Lumbago in Porky at the Crocodero. And I'm also thinking of a 1954 Woody Woodpecker that Mike Maltese wrote called Real Gone Woody, where his music was very square at that point. So they play a square record of Guy Lumbago.
Of course.
It's a subject of ridicule in that cartoon.
Of course.
So there's also a song called Hello Baby. Hello like Hello or H''Lo. Baby. And that's a song by Michael H. Clearly, Herb Magison, and Ned Washington. Ned Washington, of course, wrote many songs for Disney, including When You Wish Upon a Star. And that song plays during the glove routine. Bosko tells his little glove to do something for the audience. And that song is from a 1929 collegiate football drama called The Forward Pass, starring Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Loretta Young. Unfortunately, only the trailer and sound disc survive. There's no picture element.
That's a shame.
And the tap dance with Bosko and Honey, that's a song called Save a Rainy Day for Me. We're talking about this optimism during the Depression. We have these very positive songs about, smile, darn you, smile, brighten up and smile, those kind of songs. So Save a Rainy Day for Me was by Will Collins, Buddy Fields, and Gerald Marks. And then you have Honey's Tess Gardella routine as Aunt Jemima. She sings Was That the Human Thing to Do by Sammy Fain and, again, Joe Young. Now, that song's no stranger to animation. Betty Boop sang it in Betty Boop's Museum in 1932. She sings it with a bunch of dancing dinosaur bones and skelly-mans and all that. Very, very lovely rendition of that particular tune. Not sure if she's my honey and gosh, she's funny and we have a wonderful time. I didn't see anything in the cue sheets that indicates that a parody of a song. I believe it's original. This is something that the Schlesinger studio differed from in other cartoons, particularly Disney, and this is a reason why I feel that Freeling was the de facto director of this particular cartoon. I don't know if Harmon or Eising contributed or somebody like Bob Clampett might have contributed, but it's very unlike anything, where Bosko goes, oh, like a record slowing down, That's probably my favorite gag in the whole cartoon.
Indeed. So
the animation's great. The drawings are very odd in that when he slows down and his body kind of sings. I'm not sure who animated it.
So just to wrap it up, in terms of a score, now I personally, I quite like this one. It's definitely one of the best of the Harmon and Eisings, in my opinion, and a lot of people tend to agree with that. So look, I give this one maybe, I don't know, an 8.5 out of 10. I think this is definitely one of the strong ones, because usually with Boskos, I give it, like a 5 or a 6. It's just not as good. But this one stands out, and it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, I'll give it about that. I mean, what would you rate this one, roughly?
Yeah, I'd say I'd give this an 8.5 as well. Frank Marcel's music sounds really great in it, particularly Sweet Georgia Brown and that nice hot jazz and the Ted Lewis-esque clarinet towards the end.
Indeed.
That it's a nice, satisfying finale, and you get a bit of hope with the end of Prohibition coming, so that's a nice capper.
Exactly. Plus, yeah, we get some beer too, which I might go and get some, or at least my future editing self will probably have some. But anyway, I think that'll do it for this one. So thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, take care.
Take care, everyone.
everybody happy? Whoopee!